Hello, and welcome to my first hack, part 2. In this presentation, we're going to try and gain root access of a vulnerable system. In doing so, we're going to I had to scan the network for open ports, then find vulnerable ports, and then try to exploit them. We were able to discover the open ports with this nmap command, and then open the vulnerable or attacking console by typing in MSF console. While finding vulnerable ports, I found the open port of SMB and was able to gain root access to the Keyoptrix or the target box and change the root password. In doing so, I was able to gain root access to the entire system. Here you can see the commands that were run in order to change the root password, and you can see that the login was successful on the target machine. While no security system and best practices are perfect, I would recommend using a few mitigation techniques to help prevent against privilege escalation from an attacker. First, I'd recommend having a separation of duties so each individual job role only has access to the systems and services they need to manage or be aware of. If they need access to another system, they'll have to work with that team or require supervisor approval. Job rotation will also help ensure that no one is able to access content they are not allowed to. It can also help identify vulnerabilities because knowledge gained can be transferred to increase security and identify weaknesses in the organization. My favorite technique is to implement mandatory access control for all content and administrative movements. This means that just because someone has the clearance or status level to access something doesn't mean they should be able to. Each individual should have a valid need to know for that particular project or topic in order to have access to the content or services. Another network-wide way to protect the organization is to implement defense in-depth tactics. This means isolating each department to their own subnet and VLAN, air-gapping guest networks, and ensuring proper encryption on devices, so even if an attacker gains access to one portion of the network, they will not be able to easily obtain the God rights or keys to the kingdom. Overflowing the buffer with an executable command doesn't mean that the command will be executed. The attacker must specify a return address that points to the malicious command. The program partially crashes because the stack overflowed. It then tries to recover by going to the return address, but the return address has changed to the attacker's address to point to the command the hacker specified. The hacker must know the address where the malicious command will reside. A privilege escalation attack is a cyber attack designed to gain unauthorized access, privileged access into a system. Attackers exploit human behaviors, design flaws, or oversights in operating systems or web applications. This is closely related to lateral movement, which are tactics by which a cyber attacker moves deeper into a network in search of high-valued assets. Attackers will search for weak spots in organizational defenses that allow initial entry or basic privileges through credential theft. As explained in more detail previously and upcoming, exploiting such vulnerabilities enables further escalated privileges. Effective strategy must therefore combine techniques for prevention, detection, and swift action. A rootkit is a type of malware designed to give hackers access to and control over a target device. Although most rootkits affect the software of the operating system, some can also infect your computer's hardware and firmware. Rootkits are adept at concealing their presence, but while they remain hidden, they are definitely active. Once they gain unauthorized access to computers, rootkits enable cybercriminals to steal personal data and financial information, install malware or use computers as part of a botnet to circulate spam, and participate in distributed denial of service attacks. Just like it sounds, Trojan horse attacks are simply the Trojans in computing are defined as a type of malware that use deception and social engineering to trick unsuspecting users into running seemingly benign computer programs that hide malicious ulterior motives. While technically they are not computer viruses, but rather a separate form of malware, Trojan horse virus has become a common way to refer to them. These applications, programs, or services are seemingly helpful, but actually install malicious software that allows the attacker to maintain control over the system. That is why it is extremely important to not click on random links in an email or any type of site that you don't trust, because that could actually be installing malware. Backdoors are exactly like they sound. It's a program or service that is installed to allow the attacker to return and maintain root access to the system. It usually occurs in phases 3 or 4 during an attack and allows the attacker to plant the back door and then return at their own will and maintain root access or control over the systems. Viruses is pretty much a broad definition. Malware falls under the broad spectrum of viruses. A virus is some type of malicious software or malware that spreads between computers and causes damage to data and software. All the viruses are overarching types of malicious software that attack hardware, systems, or software. Return-oriented programming is a security exploit technique used by attackers to execute code on their target system. By obtaining control of the call stack, the attacker can control the flow of existing trusted software running on the computer and manipulate it to their own ends. Social engineering is all around us. It is a type of human hacking that commits fraud and identity theft. Hackers are going to use any type of psychological manipulation, fear, excitement, or urgency to get you to describe any type of personal information that will reveal information about yourself or passwords that might allow access into your systems. They'll use it against you to cloud your better judgment, and especially in the form of urgency. Thank you so much for coming to this discussion.